Hi, everybody. You are listening to Judging Meghan with your host, Meghan Judge. I'm going to start with the following. It is, and Dr. Kong, you also live in LA. You're in a way hotter area than I am. I'm in Manhattan Beach. It is so hot here right now. And I know I shouldn't complain because there's people in Europe and all over different countries that listen to me. And I have it pretty good because I'm by the beach. No air conditioning right now. I have an air conditioner behind me and feel like I'm sweating and I'm in a full on hot flash, which I'm not, but that's how I feel. So I just, I'm going to power through being hot because it's really hot today. Dr. Joy Kong, welcome to the podcast. I'm sure we can talk about being hot all day long because it is very hot right now, but you are a triple board certified physician. You're globally recognized. You are an educator. You specialize in anti-aging, peptides, and stem cell therapy. You also are the author of the book, Tiger of Beijing. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me, Megan.
I feel like every time I do an intro, and I've been doing this 6 years, I always trip over what I'm trying to say. And it's not my specialty, but I'm just really honored to have you. I've read your bio. I find your story really, really interesting. And I think there's a lot of women that listen to the podcast that can relate. And also the fact that you've just, built your career from scratch, which is really, really inspiring. So I just want to tell you how honored I am to have you on. I want to start with you, and I want you to tell me a little bit about yourself. So let's just start with where you're from and talk about
Yeah.
that.
Well, I'm just going to preface it. What I realize is that life is not easy for anybody. I don't care whether or not you were born with a silver spoon. It's not easy to navigate. So I have my own journey. The reason I wrote the memoir was to share the journey. So I know a lot of people, I don't care if it's men, women, we've encountered obstacles in life. We've encountered people who may not be the best for us, that we need to stand up for ourselves and kind of, find our way. So that's what the story was about. I think always been a very lucky person. I grew up on the university campus in Beijing, and it's one of the best universities in China. So I think as far as having an incredible environment to grow up in, a very intellectual environment, I was very lucky, but we had no money. My parents were just simple folks. They didn't have any connections. They weren't connected with overseas relatives or any officials. So we were not privileged in that way, but we had access to good education. What happened to me was when I was starting to become a teenager, that's when China was going through a seismic change. So early 90s, well, not early 90s, in the 80s, China went from pure socialism, communism, to market economy. And it was very confusing. But that's when we even started to have a glimpse of the outside world. So I actually had a chance to see what living in other country was like, in other countries. So America, of course, with its prolific production in entertainment arena, is exporting its culture, to other countries. So I saw what life in America was like, and I was fascinated. I was fascinated by the ideal of freedom, of
Yeah.
equality, of being able to reach for your dreams. And my parents also had students because they're both teachers. So they had a lot of, really top-notch talents. And they went to America and they were having a great life. So very early on, it was kind of in my consciousness. I think starting when I was 13, 14, 15, I just thought I wanted to come to America. That was a dream. For the venture, for the challenge, for the potential, whatever, that's abundance. So a lot of things are all kind of congealed, all these ideas congealed in this single-minded desire to go to America. So the book actually started with my visa rejection when I was 20 years old. So that was my first try to get to America. I worked very hard to get to that point because the Chinese government didn't really want you to leave, right? I was in college, I was studying architecture. We were the brightest of the country. We were the talents that the country needed. And the government didn't really like the fact that all of us wanted to leave. So they made it pretty difficult. But even with that, I got to the point where I was standing in front of the American Embassy with a $10,000 scholarship from Clark University. I thought, arrogantly, I was going to go because right after the visa, getting the visa, my parents and I were going to go shop for a suitcase and I'm going to hop on a flight. But then I was rejected. So that was my first major failure in a sense, that reality, the world as is, was giving me a slap on the face. That's you think you're going, but no, sorry. So that was a very, very important point in my life, which is this rejection. And
Can I ask you a question?
yeah.
So, did your parents want you to leave? Did they want, because that's such a huge distance, when you're a
Oh,
parent to
the
be that
beautiful
far
thing,
away.
yeah, the beautiful thing about my parents, I really, really have to give them credit, was
Hmm.
because they said, Joy, just do whatever you want to do. Whatever decision you make, we're going to be 100% behind you. So if you want to stay in China, stay. If you want to leave, we're going to we're going to give you all our savings and we're going to borrow the same amount, which altogether I think was about $1,000. So we're going to give you our entire life savings, and then are going to borrow the same amount so you can have some cash on you. But the rest, what you're going to do is up to you, right? This is the best we can do. And I was thinking, no problem. I mean, the first thing I'm going to do when I get to America was to find a Chinese restaurant. Everybody starts with washing dishes. I'm going to start with washing dishes. So that was my single plan. The only plan I had was to start by washing dishes. And of course, enroll in school. So I'm going to wash dishes on the side. No further plan. So, but even with that kind of determination, right? Willingness to do the hard work, America said no. So um, either I accept defeat and go back to studying architecture, or I push forward. So what I decided to do was, the desire was too strong of wanting to come to America. So I was going to give it my 100%. So I took a year of leave of absence from my college, which my classmates thought that I was nuts, that I would just stop going to school for a whole year. What if you can't leave? And I was like, well, then I'll think about it at that time. Then I'll come back. So big deal. So there's a very different way of dealing with things. Some people want to play safe, and I really didn't care for playing safe. I want to have something fully aligned with my energy. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. So, but still, I didn't know how to get to America, because the reason I was rejected was because I didn't have a good affidavit of support. So any person, foreign nationals who want to come to America, you need an American to write this affidavit of support, right? To show to the government that you're not going to become a burden of the American government. And all the people that we could ask this favor from were my parents' students, because we didn't know anybody else.
Hmm.
So the American embassy didn't believe it. So in my mind, my conclusion was, I didn't have a good affidavit of support, not because, it has nothing to do with me. It's because of my circumstances, which means that I better change my circumstances. So how do I find a good person that can write this affidavit of support? Was step number one is to know somebody that's an American, right? Or someone that's outside of China that American government will believe is a credible sponsor. So then in my craziness, determination, whatever it is, I decided that I had to know somebody. So my way
Yeah.
of knowing people will be to grab the yellow pages of Beijing and start calling, doing cold calling to hotel rooms, unknown hotel rooms. So I just started calling one room after another, to the best hotels in Beijing. So that was the beginning of this adventure, right? The visa rejection. So like the hero's journey. So you're thrown into this obstacle. I mean, it's no fun when there's no obstacle, right? Who wants to read a book that's all honky-dory and happy existence. So it was difficult. So that's an adventure. Meeting people who may not be the best people. Um, I eventually ended up finding a job as a tour guide because of my like bull in the china shop approach.
Yeah. So where were you a tour guide?
Tibet, out of all places, it was amazing. It was life-changing experience. So I took these about 8 Americans, 2 Europeans to the Himalayas, and we trekked for 3 weeks. Got to the north face of Mount Everest, and it's just an amazing experience. But still, nobody wanted to help me on the team. I was hoping that somebody would be so kind to be a sponsor. Not that I was counting on anybody to actually pay for my existence at all. I didn't want a single cent, um, but I just needed that piece of paper. But
I
no,
I have a question.
yeah.
So I know that when you're young like that, I was like this too. You have a passion, right?
Hmm.
And you won't take no for an answer. And I think some people have it and some people don't, right? I grew up in Washington, D.C., outside in Potomac, Maryland. And my whole childhood, I wanted to be an actress. I wanted to move to LA. I
Mm.
wanted to be on a TV show. I wanted to do all that stuff. And nobody could tell me no, no matter what I did. People would say, oh, it's such a hard business. Why would you want to do that? What a waste, you know? And I don't know. It's something that was in me that just, I knew I needed to do it. And it didn't mean, I mean, all these years later, it didn't have that business. I got out of it and I do what I do now. But I just think it's so inspiring how young people, especially women, that you just kind of have it in you. And I find your story really inspiring that you just didn't take no for an answer and
Yeah,
cut to all these years later. It's why you are where you are, you know? And I think it's a really important lesson that we teach girls wherever they're, I have people listening all over the world, just because one or two or three people shut a door in your face and they say no, do- having a dream and having hope is something that nobody else can take away from you. Right.
right,
And I
right.
find what you're saying is really that you kept having doors closed and you kept finding ways to kind of get that door open a little bit. And it's
Yeah,
really
I'll pry
inspiring.
it open,
Yeah.
whatever it
Pry
takes.
it open.
So
I
it's
love
interesting.
it.
Part of this is stubbornness. And I remember my mom told me, she said, I never knew a person could be this stubborn until I gave birth to you. So there's this thing in me that I want to get to where I want to get. So including now, I want to make stem cell therapy available to a lot of people. I want this to be provided at scale. I've trained a lot of doctors this weekend. We have a lot of doctors who come to my academy training. So this is all because I just feel someone needs to take up this task of assuring quality in this stem cell therapy that we're doing. So, and then when I want to do something like this, which is on the edge of medicine in a sense, one day it's going to,
Hmm.
mainstream. It's going to be so silly when people look back and, oh yeah, at one point it was considered kind of out there, or yeah, that people were still having a lot of doubts and think this is some kind of fancy treatment. This is a very, very foundational. That we are, it's about time that we recognize the miraculous power within the human body and borrow some of that power, which is encoded in our DNA, and we're just borrowing it. It's no big deal. And so because we're still considered on the fringe, because it would be interesting to do a survey of all the MDs, all the doctors in the country, and see how many actually are supportive of this therapy. I think still is in the minority of people who are actually speak well of the therapy, mostly from ignorance and arrogance, to be honest, because they
Yeah.
have,
Well,
because they look at
it's the same as, not to talk over you, because I also want to find out how you finally got here, but I do want to say this. Stem cell therapy peptides, if you're if you're somebody like me, that interviews people for a living or my life and is interested in, health and well-being and mental health and all these things, you would be shocked. It's hard to find people that are not full of it and on the black market, especially with peptides and all of that. So I think it's almost like how hormones are for women, right? We've been, because we are female, we're always thought of last, whereas the little blue pill has been around for 30 years. Now they're talking about giving testosterone. Don't get me started with all of this to soldiers, but that's beside the point. Men are always given a leg up over women. And as far as menopause, estrogen, testosterone, all of that stuff, there's all kinds of studies. But there was one study done in the 80s, as you know, or a couple studies that caused cancer. So then all these women went off of it when now there's all this research, mostly female funded research, mind you, where they're finding all the benefits of hormones. And, so I kind of think what you're talking about right now is you're being female on the forefront, being an expert. We're always going to kind of be pushed down and not believed. And then you see all the results of what, stem cells are doing to help people. It's incredible. So I'm just grateful that there's people like you that are willing. And I think your early childhood and what you've gone through makes you the person that's going to fight even harder for the future for these therapies. Don't you think?
That's true. I don't live in fear. I've never have.
Mm-hmm.
And really, what's the worst thing can happen to me? Since I was very young, I decided that I was not afraid of death. So like, what can happen? So I'm gonna do what's right. I believe stem cell therapy, and along with a lot of other very integrative approaches to health, is the right way of the future. This is what medicine should be, and this is where we're going. So I'm gonna push for healing, right? Push for people to do better in life and to have less suffering. So I'm on the right side of history. And so yeah, that I'm
10
just
years from now, people are going to be like, wow, Dr. Kong was right all along. I mean, it's one of those things. And then everybody gets on the bandwagon. So let's go backwards a little bit. So you finally make it to the am I jumping ahead? I just wanted you to tell me how you actually finally made it here. And I knew you've gone through a lot, but I would love
yeah.
for you to tell
Well, then
myself
I'll
and
be
my listeners.
giving away the whole book, but I will
Just give
you know
me a
what?
little skosh of the piece
Okay.
of how you made it.
So on the last day in Tibet, remember I said none of the team members, even though they told me how much they loved me, I did such an amazing job, but nobody wanted to help me. However, on the very last day, leaving Tibet, I met somebody in a taxi. I met an American man in a taxi. So, and that brought on this whole, the very interesting part of the book. That's really the first part of the book is how I left China. It was very exciting. So I did end up in this romantic relationship, and it was this stormy, passionate relationship, and we traveled everywhere in China. Interesting stories, including me trying to escape detection, that because we were in the same room, I jumped out of a window in a hotel in Inner Mongolia. I mean, there's all kinds of really interesting.
I'm waiting for the TV movie.
I know it's pretty interesting. I was definitely playing like 007, passing, little note, dropping a little crumbled piece of paper with my room numbers and dropping it, on a couch in the hotel lobby because there are so many eyes watching. It was just, yeah. So it's very, very interesting time, but I made it to America. So 8 months after my visa rejection, I landed in San Francisco. First day going to Golden Gate Bridge, just blown away by how beautiful this country is. But then, the next part is the difficult part. It's difficult for the heart, for the soul, because I was with somebody that well, now is a word that's thrown around a lot, but that's has significant narcissism, right?
Mhm.
Narcissistic, very controlling, very manipulative, um, very jealous. So as a young woman who I was 20 years old when I got to America. I was very naive and not just confused. I was very confused when another human is in a relationship with you who's supposed to love you and care about you more than anything else, right? You are partners. But how come everything, like all these things he did was hurting me? Like why did I feel so terrible? And just I couldn't understand because to me, two people love each other. You would do everything possible to make sure that each other is happy, right? That's the normal, um, uh, approach to life. So I couldn't understand why, when I was trying to explain that I was suffering, that he couldn't hear me. So until, I mean, I sustained for almost 2 years, I think. I part of me was afraid that I was going to be, if I left a relationship, I was going to be sent right back to China. And at one point, he did threaten that. Uh,
Did you know anybody else? Had you made friends here, or was it kind of
he
a
made sure
situation?
that I would have no friends. Yeah,
Okay. So it was like
he
he
was not
wooed you.
happy when I started to have friendships.
Yeah.
Innocent, right? Female friendships. He didn't like that. So no, I was very much isolated. I didn't know anybody. Yeah. So that was on purpose. So I was isolated, and I was suffering and then confused, because you have to realize suffering is not the only picture that's in this kind of relationship. There were also happiness. There were times that this person is looking into your eyes, telling you how much they love you, admire you, adore you, and they have tears in their eyes. But then 3 days later, they do something that really hurt you. But it's very confusing, right? So I think a lot of people go through this, and this is one reason they're not getting out as early as they probably should have. Um,
Also, you were so young, you were coming to this country. They isolate. This is what narcissists do. They isolate you. They woo you in the beginning, love bomb, all those things. And then you were isolated. I'm sure it was also kind of a culture shock for you to come to the United States, I mean, all of that
that
stuff must have
part
been,
is no problem. I mean,
yeah,
I'm very
you loved
adaptable.
it.
Yeah, it's an adventure, and it's
Mm.
just great getting to know Americans and whatever, people from everywhere in the world, and it's really fun. I did develop a really nice friendship with a German girl. That was more toward the end, when I was just ready to leave. But yeah, I loved, just there's so much, so many different kinds of people. But the problem was, I think a lot of people don't understand, even if, let's say, you've never been in relationships like that. And then you have this friend who is in this toxic relationship, but you don't know how to interpret, and you don't know how to advise the person. And so that's what I saw. My friends, they didn't know what's going on either, except that one time I remember this girl said, "He doesn't love you." And I was, "What do you mean? He loves me. He tells me how much he loves me. He had tears in his eyes. Of course, how dare you say he doesn't love me?" And she was like, "No, he wouldn't do that if he loved you."
Hmm.
So it, that was interesting, right? That is very, very, yeah. So that was the navigation. And parents, how many parents tell their daughter, well, if a man does this, and this, that's a really bad sign. You need to run. And they don't have the knowledge. They have had a simple life, right? My parents they were married for 47 years. They haven't seen pathologies like that. So they wouldn't even know what to tell you.
So were you turning to your parents? Were you obviously still in communication with them and they were kind of telling you to stay in the situation?
Oh, I hid from them for a couple of years because I didn't want them to worry,
Yeah.
because there's nothing they could do. Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's no sense making them
So you
worry.
so you ended up leaving the situation after how many years?
Just two.
Okay.
Yeah. just 2
So
years.
when you left your situation, without giving away the book, because we want everyone to read it, you ended up with nothing, correct? And you kind of had to start your
I
whole
was
life over.
I was in a shelter. Yeah,
Okay.
I absolutely had nothing. Yeah. So, but the beauty of America is that there's a way that I feel the system can help you survive.
Hmm.
So I was, unfortunately at the time, so as long as you are married on paper to somebody that has resources, then you don't qualify for financial assistance. So that's the sad part. So I was stuck until I can get freed up. Um, However, I think you can. Um, what happened to me was that I was going to borrow, right, money from school, but then I did get a scholarship, which was very, very lucky because there are these professors who stood up for me, even though I didn't qualify for the minorities scholarship because I was the wrong minority. I
Yeah.
happened to be a Chinese. If you are Far East Asians, because because if you're Chinese, Japanese, and Korean, you've done pretty well academically, so you're not underrepresented. It doesn't matter if you're disadvantaged, and you have no money. No matter how hard things are, you don't qualify for these scholarships because even though it says it's for minorities, but it's for a specific kind of minority. So for Pacific Islanders. So definitely I was not that. But I had professors that stood up for me because I was one of the best students. So I'm forever grateful. Yeah.
I love that you bring that up too, because a lot of times people feel like there's no one, and you were so determined. It just takes all of the no's that we kind of talked about. And although you met kind of the wrong person and ended up with that person and got away, it just takes one yes, and it seems like you had help along the way there. And I try to remind my audience all the time that if you are going through something really hard, I mean, your story is very challenging. There's so many women that listen to my podcast, or I've done so many episodes about abuse and the way that men treat women, that if you're determined to and you just ask someone for help, a lot of times you can find it. It might be hard, but there's always one person, I feel like. And along the way in my own life, there's always been one person or someone. And it's a reminder that if you are listening and you are in a situation like this, that there's always hope, right? Don't you think
Yeah.
that?
Talk to people because I
Mhm.
was so isolated. I thought if I left a relationship, one, I will be deported back to China. Two, I'll be homeless. I thought those were my options until this attorney friend of ours who
Mhm.
stayed with us and overheard what was going on, and who got really worried because he heard the arguing. And then when my ex left, that's when he pulled me aside and asking me if I was okay. And he said he was worried about me. And he took this yellow pages and showed me all the places where there's Asian Law Caucus, there's shelters, there are there are emergency lines or crisis lines. So he wrote all those down. I remember this one page that with all these numbers that didn't know that there were help, that there are agencies or charities or there are places that people have set up just to help people in tough places, tough times. So that was an eye opener.
Yeah. And that was a person along the way. So you ended up putting yourself through school, correct?
Yeah,
Okay. So not to jump ahead, but you ended up getting triple board certified. I mean,
that's a long time. But yes,
if you look back on your life, and I find it so inspirational for other women. I talk a lot about women because men have a leg up, period. And if you are listening and you are a male, I apologize, but it's true, right? It's really inspirational that you did all of this, pulled yourself up, put yourself through school, And now look at where you are. So tell me about that, because it's really amazing.
I think one thing is that I go with the energy kind of. I didn't realize that's what I was doing, but I'll go for what excites me. So when I was in China, I loved architecture, but I wanted to come to America, and in America, I realized I could become anything I wanted, and so I went into biology because I loved the mystery of life and just yeah. So I wanted to become a professor at the time. But then I realized that I wasn't so excited about doing research, which is very focused way of directing your intellect. I want something that's more broad. I want to incorporate different things that I learn to do something practical. So being a doctor is a perfect marriage of the knowledge and application. And then in medical school, mm, we have a chance to go through different disciplines. So you can choose, whatever you want to be. And it was in psychiatry that I thought that I was the most excited. Like I have the most fun. That's the most important thing. That it has to be fun. It has to, make you almost give you a little giggle inside. That you're like, oh, this is cool. So that was this cool kind of feeling about psychiatry make me want to just go into psychiatry. Let's just talk to people and let's find out, what make them tick. And if they suffer, I I can talk to them, but I also have medications. So I was more interested probably in the medication aspect because I liked quick and fast solutions. Although
Hmm.
talking to people, psychology, it's all very interesting. But I so I went in with my heart in a sense. My heart says this is really cool, and so I went. And then after doing psychiatry for 11 years, I realized that I was limited in what I could do for patients because there's so much of the human body we're ignoring. So I wasn't a complete doctor. I wasn't as effective as I could be because I'm ignoring everything else in this person that could be affecting their mental state, their hormones, right? Their nutrition, what about the toxicity? Like all the things that's going on in the human body, we were not addressing them. So I wanted to broaden my scope and be more helpful. And that's what got me into the holistic aspect of medicine. And from there, that's when I encountered stem cells. And that's when that giveaway feeling was coming back. That it's like, oh my God, I can give these cells, I can put in the body of somebody, and it can bring these drastic changes. And it doesn't even matter what conditions they have, because it's really a very elegant therapy. If I just put the cells in the body, somewhere, in the blood, okay, there they go. They go anywhere in the body that they're attracted to. And then once they get to the area that they think they need to be, they get themselves out of the blood vessels and start to work in that area and start to send signals to your body as a whole to recruit more armies to come to that area and or to make other changes to your immune changes, right? The things that are more systemic. So in a sense, it's like a little miracle injection, right? I put something in the body and it does its own thing. It's like injecting a intelligent pharmacy. It's not just a pharmacy. It's a treatment team. It's like a medical mission. So I just put this
How long have you been doing stem cell therapy?
10 years.
Okay. So let me ask you this, because for my listeners, I don't really understand, and I'm stem cell therapy. I mean, I know I understand it to an extent, but a lot of people are using it for, hair. A lot of people are using it for beauty purposes. Tell myself and my listeners how stem cells are used in general for everything, because I find them fascinating, and it's something where a lot of people are talking. I mean, I live in LA, so people are talking about it everywhere, but I don't really understand it. So can you kind of
Yeah.
give a breakdown for my
Okay.
listeners?
So when we were born, or even when we were conceived, we were a single stem cell. So from that single stem cell, we're able to divide, morph, and start to gain more and more function until we build a organ, right? The organs are the entities that are performing functions in the body. But anywhere before the cells become the organ and organ working cells, they're all stem cells. So because they have the potential to become anything they want and to communicate with each other, so they have this ability to not only give you new tissue, build new cells, but they can also send signals to promote this regeneration, making things new, right? Making new things. So they have the code and the communication capabilities to make new things. And the problem with diseases is that the tissue is not good, right? Things are damaged. So if we can make it new, now we've completely healed that organ, right? So that's the end. And that would be the holy grail. If we can make things new, not just, patch it up and make it, sort of okay, we actually make a whole new organ in a sense. So how can they do that? Well, first of all, there are thousands of different kinds of stem cells. Before it, until it becomes the end working cell is a stem cell. So they're like all these the pathways within, from the first fertilized egg. But you can intercept somewhere and get the cells that's still a stem cell. It's not the working cell, and utilize what information they may have. And one of the most popular stem cell we're using these days is mesenchymal stem cells. Mu cells has become popular and is a fraction, is a subpopulation of mesenchymal stem cells. But the mesenchymal stem cells are actually everywhere in your body. They're very special, very particular in a sense, because they're almost set up as the nature's way to regenerate. Because anywhere you have blood vessels, you will have these stem cells that's holding on to the blood vessels. I always think of it like a gecko, like holding on this wall of the blood vessel. Outside of the blood vessels, it's going to sense, the tentacles. It's going to sense what's flowing through the blood, but it also has other, sensors and little, feet out into the neighborhood to figure out what's going on, what the local needs are. It also can contact, literally, kind of tapping, or not literally, but talking to local stem cells, telling them to regenerate, to make more of themselves, to start to differentiate. So differentiate means to gain function, to become gain further functions. So there are local stem cells, which is the last stage of stem cells right before they become the cell of the organ. I say heart muscle cell. So right before they become the heart muscle cell, they are the progenitor cell. That's the only thing they can do as far as the capabilities. Unlike other cells, stem cells that are further upstream, they can become all kinds of cells. That end organ stem cell can only become that cells for that organ. But these mesenchymal stem cells actually are in touch with them and can trigger them to do that. So the reason it's so popular, this mesenchymal stem cells as a therapy, is because of the ability of signaling that they can send throughout the body. That's really what they do. They help organize and orchestrate regeneration. So how do they do that? First of all, it calms the immune system, where it's not staying in an inflammatory state. So as we get older, we're all more inflamed. And the inflammation, a lot of times, even for injuries, we're stuck, right? People have knee pains. Your body has ability to heal itself. Why are you still having knee pain? So how come the cells weren't just making new tissue, right? Just repair itself? Because it can. When you were a kid, that's what it did. How come as we get older and older, it became more and more sluggish? As partially because of the environment, and partially because the stem cells are more sluggish because they're older. So all these factors. But one of the things that stem cells can do is to calm the inflammation, because inflammation, if it's stagnant, is preventing your body from going onto the regeneration side. So everything is just stuck. So these stem cells can calm the inflammation. Now you can get the other side to come on board and start to rebuild. And it can shift your immune system from an inflammatory state to an anti-inflammatory state. So there are two sides. Both are important. You need acute inflammation to mount an attack, right? That kind of reaction can be for fighting an injury. You need to mobilize your system to get this inflammatory response. to come on board to start the repair process. But if you're stuck right there, then you're not moving for the next onto the next step, then you're not repairing.
So,
Or for
so why are so many people talking about stem cells for or health purposes along with the peptide? What's the how do
Well,
they
the
work
mechanism.
together?
So okay. So I was, kind of going to the whole long. I wanted
Yeah,
to give your listeners like a really a scientific understanding, because most doctors. This is why I have an academy. Most doctors, when they talk about stem cells, they're not understanding how the stem cells work, right?
yeah,
Exactly why they can help you. You're mentioning for beauty, for skin. Why does it help with your skin?
yeah,
Well, it's the same thing as how they help anywhere else body. Calm the inflammation, right? And it can break down scar tissue. So that's one thing they can do, right? You've had all these wrinkling and you have scarring. There's scarring going on in all kinds of organs. Fibrosis, it can be in penises, it can be in, liver. So all these lungs. So you can break down the fibrotic tissue. That's one thing these stem cells can do. It
hmm
can also help regenerate more blood vessels. So now we're supplying more blood supply, right? The oxygen, nutrients, removing toxic waste. Same thing for the skin. You can, help. And then, of course, it can trigger local cells to divide, right? You got more the fibroblasts, and you have them to secrete more collagen. So these are the cells. They're building new cells, more functional cells, healthier cells that will give you the collagen to rebuild the skin, and it will break down the scar tissue, and it will give you more blood vessels to supply the what's needed for the proper function of the new tissue. And it can, has anti-cancer properties. I've treated, if we're talking about skin, a person with pre-cancer, you can see a lot of lesions on the face. I did one stem cell treatment. I just injected stem cells. You don't inject into the lesion itself. You inject into the healthy tissue around the lesion, so it can kind of crowd out and eventually let the bad tissue pop off, literally, because you're building healthy tissue right underneath it. So now the tissue that are diseased can becomes, can become dead. Yeah, can be dead, and then
So
pop off.
so if you were I just did an episode about I had a little bit of a skin cancer scare. If you did the injections around
Yeah.
freckle or something that had melanoma, it would prevent your chances of it spreading.
Well, these cells have anti-cancer properties. I would not
Okay.
say that if you're using your own stem cells. So there's the whole, arena of
It's like
what kind
it's
of
like a
stem cell you use.
4-hour podcast that we could do
Yes,
about all of this. I
yes,
just find it fascinating that we're in the infancy, right, of
yes, they
understanding
are.
cell therapy, and where the direction that it's going is endless,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So like for that patient, the
hmm
lesion went away, right? I'm literally helping him to grow fresh new tissue. So
hmm
now we're really regenerating. That's the final goal of what we want for any conditions. So yeah, so anti-cancer and it elevates the cellular energy, so it can donate mitochondria to help your skin cells to have better mitochondria. We all know as we get older and older, our mitochondria also gets less and less functional. So if you use younger stem cells, which contain younger and more vibrant mitochondria, now you can do that. But if you're just getting stem cells from your own body, that's a whole other thing. Not only the mitochondria is not as good, there are also other degradations in the DNA when it's an older stem cell. And also these older stem cells are have declined, have a reduced capability of recognizing cancer. So that's where we have the, scary thought that, oh, stem cells may exacerbate cancer. Well, depending on what kinds of stem cells. If you're
hmm
getting stem cells from your own body, these stem cells are blindly telling everything to grow. If your stem cells have not helped you to get rid of certain cancer already, right? If you have some existing cancer and you put more high concentration of these cells in the body. Now they can send more signals to everything, including cancer. Now we're having the scare of
So that is where listeners, people need to be careful about where they're doing their research or who they're going to. I brought up like the peptide thing. There's like a whole black market on that. And also you're talking about stem cell therapy. You have to be really careful about who you're getting information. There's so much fraud, I would assume, in these areas because people want to just make money, correct?
That's true. And then that's the thing that I was not happy about when I first got into the stem cell therapy part. I think within the first year, I decided that I needed to set up my own company because
Hmm.
what I saw was these laboratories, they say one thing, but what they actually do is very different, that they're not upholding to the best standards. They're multiplying the cells. But hiding it from people. When you start to multiply, that's the one thing that people don't realize. You think you're going overseas, you're getting 100 million, 300 million cells, a billion cells. People are, the number is going crazy. You think you're doing yourself uh, like a favor by getting more cells, and how you're going to get more benefit. But you have to look at how they are obtaining the cells. If they are obtaining the cells directly from the umbilical cord, which I believe is a superior source than a person's own, um, but if you try to get it just from the pure extraction without letting them grow in the culture, that 100 million, 300 million is going to be astronomical as far as cost. So you're getting cells that have been expanded, which means they put in the incubator and let them grow and grow, and that causes degradation of the cells. So there's all kinds of problems, more side effects, chance of rejection. Also, they're less effective. So
Yeah.
even if you get 10 times the number, the results tend to be less. So people need to understand what they're getting.
I feel like we could do like I said, a 3-hour podcast about this, but I find your story really amazing and it's inspiring because you picked yourself up, put yourself through school, did all of this stuff on your own. You're now a very successful doctor. Tell me just a few for closing purposes, because I'm so fascinated by the whole stem cell peptide thing. I want my listeners also at the end for them to be able to find you and find your book. So we'll talk about all of that. But just a few takeaways for people. When people hear your story and they feel beaten down in life or they're stuck in a situation of being in an abusive situation, what is something you could tell somebody that you know now that you didn't know then?
Um, well, I think you have an obligation to yourself to be brave because you've been given a gift, which is life itself. You can't take it lightly, and you're stronger than you know. So if you don't tap into that strength within you, then then life is not going to be as good. So if you want to live life to the maximum, you've got to tap into that strength within yourself. So even when things are tough, have I gone through tough times? Besides what I talked about, yes. Trying to do stem cell therapy, under the atmosphere of a lot of doubt, and like even from the lack of support from the regulatory agencies, right? So there are obstacles, but you've got to um, believe in yourself, and if you're doing the right things for yourself and for the world, then that's things are going to be better than you ever think, even if temporarily that you think it's tough. So I think the takeaway is just not to have fear and believe in your own strength, because I think just like how our body's able to regenerate and is so resilient, so is our spirit, and so is life itself.
I
Yeah.
agree. Um, for my listeners, I was yesterday, I believe a lot in signs. I always follow signs. I'm spiritual and I believe in signs. And my sign is the monarch butterfly. and I was with my sister yesterday, and it's the time of year where we see monarch butterflies everywhere. And like you, I was a dreamer. I talked about that in the beginning of following signs and spirituality and honestly never giving up. So if you have an instinct and you want to do something with your life, we're here for such a short time. Follow your dream, listeners. Do it. If doors are closing all the time, it just like we talked about, it just takes one person to open a door and then open it a little more. And as a society, we're all struggling with war and all the horrible things that are going on right now. But it just takes one person, and there's people out there that care. And if you're struggling with your mental health, I like to tell people that you might be in a situation like Dr. Kong, where you feel like you're in a shelter or wherever you are, that every situation is temporary. Nothing is permanent. So there's always a way out. So in closing, I wanted to ask you where everybody could find you.
Yeah, I think my YouTube channel is a good place because I talk about, all the things we didn't get to talk about. I talk about so much about stem cell therapy, so you can really take a deep dive. I think by the time you read all or watch all my videos on stem cell therapy on my YouTube channel, you would know, more than know more about stem cells than 99% of the doctors out there. So, and then I have a podcast as well, the Dr. Joy Kong podcast, where I talk about different subjects, but also interview some remarkable people. And then my Instagram, if people want to reach me directly, is Dr._Joy_Kong. That's Kong. And or my personal website is joykongmd.com. And it talks about everything I do, because besides my clinic, I also have a stem cell company. So that's the part where I want to make sure things are done correctly, that I'm not going to cut corners. I'm going to give people the very best product that I know that can be supported by science and that I know are produced in the right way. So that's the stem cell company. And then at my academy for any doctors who want to get trained. And then and I have a cosmetic line. It's called
My God, look at you. Wait, where can everybody find your book?
Tiger of Beijing is on Amazon. Yeah.
Okay.
There's also an Audible version where I was the narrator. So that's it's a fun listen.
Okay. Well, I follow you on Instagram. I just followed you earlier today, and listeners, she is a wealth of knowledge, and I'm really happy that I got to meet you today. And looking forward to, we're both in LA, so maybe I'm going to be making a consultation to talk to you about stem cells for myself. One
thing we should talk about is stem cells for anti-aging purposes. Literally, there's science showing that stem cells can reverse aging, literally reverse the age of cells. So it's not, and this is supported by studies where they dissected the animals' muscles and brain and realized all the markers that shows what the age of the cells were back to the younger levels. So the cells literally are functioning as a younger cell. So
okay, I'm ready. Sign me up. Okay, everyone, in closing, you matter, your story matters. Keep going. Thank you.
Judging Meghan with Meghan Judge.